Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most explosive and transformative events in world history, the French Revolution. It's a story of bread, blood, and the birth of an idea that would change everything: liberty, equality, and fraternity. So grab your tricolor cockade, and let's journey back to 18th century France. Picture this: France in the late 1700s. On the surface, it's the cultural capital of Europe. You've got the glittering Palace of Versailles, King Louis XVIII and his glamorous queen, Marie Antoinette, living a life of unimaginable luxury. But peel back that golden veneer, and you find a nation on the brink of collapse. The country was deeply in debt, thanks to expensive wars, including helping out with the American Revolution, and an unfair tax system that was crushing the common people. French society was rigidly divided into three groups, known as the Three Estates. The first estate was the clergy, the church. The second estate was the nobility. Together, these two estates made up a tiny fraction of the population, about 2%, but they held almost all the wealth and power and paid virtually no taxes. And then there was everyone else, the third estate. This was 98% of the population. It included everyone from poor peasants and city workers to well-educated lawyers, doctors, and merchants, known as the bourgeoisie. They bore the entire tax burden, funding the lavish lifestyles of the rich and the expenses of the state. As you can imagine, this didn't sit well with them. Add to this years of bad harvests, which sent the price of bread, the staple food for the poor, skyrocketing. People were literally starving while the monarchy partied. The famous, though likely misattributed quote, "Let them eat cake," perfectly captures the disconnect between the rulers and the ruled. The pressure cooker was about to blow. To solve the financial crisis, King Louis XVIII was forced to call a meeting of the Estates General in May 1789, an assembly representing all three estates. It was the first time it had met in 175 years. But there was a catch. Traditionally, each estate got one vote. This meant the first and second estates could always outvote the third estate 2-1, ensuring nothing would ever change. The members of the third estate, inspired by the Enlightenment ideas of thinkers like Rousseau and Voltaire, who championed rights, reason, and democracy, had had enough. They declared themselves the National Assembly, the true representatives of the French people. When they found themselves locked out of their usual meeting hall, they gathered in a nearby indoor tennis court and took a solemn oath, the famous tennis court oath, swearing not to disband until they had written a new constitution for France. This was a direct challenge to the king's authority. The revolution had begun. Tension in Paris was at an all-time high. The people feared the king would use the army to crush the new National Assembly. On July 14, 1789, needing weapons and gunpowder to defend themselves, a massive crowd of Parisians stormed the Bastille, a medieval fortress used as a state prison. The Bastille was a powerful symbol of the monarchy's absolute and oppressive power. Its fall was a monumental victory for the revolutionaries and is still celebrated today as France's National Day. The revolutionary spirit spread like wildfire across the country. In a wave of panic known as the Great Fear, peasants rose up against their feudal lords, burning manors and destroying records of their obligations. In response, the National Assembly made a groundbreaking move. On August 26, 1789, it issued the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. This document, inspired by the American Declaration of Independence, proclaimed that all men were born and remain free and equal in rights. It guaranteed rights to liberty, property, security, and resistance to oppression. This was a radical departure from the old system of privilege and hierarchy. But the king was reluctant to accept these changes. In October, thousands of Parisian women, furious over the continuing bread shortages, marched 12 miles to Versailles. Armed with pikes and kitchen knives, they demanded the king and his family return to Paris with them, so he could see the suffering of his people firsthand. The royal family was forced to comply and became virtual prisoners in the capital. Power had decisively shifted from the palace to the streets. The revolution entered a more radical phase. The National Assembly seized church lands to pay off the national debt and brought the clergy under state control. The king, feeling increasingly threatened, tried to flee the country with his family in 1791, but they were caught near the border and brought back to Paris in disgrace. This escape attempt shattered any remaining trust the people had in him. For many, it was proof that he was a traitor to the revolution. By 1792, France was at war with other European monarchies like Austria and Prussia, who feared the revolutionary ideas would spread to their own countries. Amid the chaos and paranoia of war, the revolution took a dark and violent turn. The monarchy was officially abolished, and France was declared a republic. King Louis XVI was put on trial for treason, and in January 1793, he was executed by the newly invented, supposedly more humane guillotine. Marie Antoinette would follow him to the scaffold 9 months later. The execution of the king sent shockwaves across Europe and plunged France into its most terrifying chapter, the Reign of Terror. A powerful committee, the Committee of Public Safety, led by the incorruptible but ruthless Maximilien Robespierre, took control. Their goal was to purify the Republic of its enemies. What followed was a brutal period of mass executions. Anyone suspected of being a counter-revolutionary, from nobles to priests to ordinary citizens who were unenthusiastic enough, could be arrested, given a sham trial, and sent to the guillotine. An estimated 40,000 people were killed during this period. It was a time of extreme paranoia, where yesterday's revolutionary could be today's traitor. Eventually, the bloodshed became too much. The revolution began to devour its own. Fearing they would be next, Robespierre's own colleagues turned against him. In July 1794, he was arrested and executed, ending the Reign of Terror. France was exhausted. After the chaos, the people longed for stability. This created the perfect opportunity for a brilliant and ambitious young general to rise through the ranks, Napoleon Bonaparte. In 1799, he staged a coup d'état, overthrowing the government and eventually declaring himself Emperor of France. In many ways, Napoleon's rise marked the end of the French Revolution, replacing the Republic with a new kind of monarchy. So, what was it all for? The French Revolution is complex. It was a period of incredible idealism and horrific violence. But its legacy is undeniable. It dismantled the old feudal system and the absolute monarchy in France. It spread the revolutionary ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity across the globe, inspiring countless other movements for independence and democracy. Concepts we take for granted today, like human rights, citizenship, and the idea that a government's power comes from the people, have their roots in this turbulent decade. It fundamentally reshaped not just France, but the entire modern world. Thank you so much for joining me on this whirlwind tour of the French Revolution. It's a vast and fascinating topic, and we've only scratched the surface. If you found this interesting, please hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss our next historical deep dive. What part of the revolution do you find most fascinating? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious.